When young mother Ava Beck moves into an upscale apartment complex with her newborn son, she expects peace, privacy, and the start of a new life after a difficult separation. Her unit is modest but safe, with thick walls and a quiet neighborhood feel. Until the couple next door arrives, Emma and Nolan Hart seem like the perfect tenants, friendly, sophisticated, and always ready with a warm smile. But almost immediately, subtle red flags begin to emerge. Lights flicker. Shared walls thud in the night. Ava's baby monitor, which she watches religiously, starts losing power. She brushes it off until one night, the monitor goes completely dead. In a rush of panic, Ava discovers the outlet it's plugged into has been unplugged. And when she confronts her neighbors, Emma simply says with a casual laugh, "We just needed one outlet." Ava doesn't laugh. She calls building security. But what starts as a simple complaint quickly spirals into a psychological chess game. The Harts, polished and unervingly composed, begin to manipulate the system, turning the building staff, even other tenants, against Ava. Her paranoia grows, but is it paranoia, or is she actually being watched? This is a slow-burn domestic thriller rooted in a mother's primal need to protect her child. It unfolds into a story of quiet warfare, institutional gaslighting, buried secrets, and the terrifying realization that sometimes, the most dangerous people live one wall away. I didn't notice the sound at first. Newborns make noise all the time. Gurgles, sighs, those sudden breathy gasps that make you sit up in the dark, heart racing. But this wasn't that. This was silence. A deep, humming kind of silence. The kind that tells you something's wrong before your brain catches up. I sat on the couch, one leg tucked under me, my hand wrapped around a mug of tea I hadn't sipped in an hour. The baby monitor screen was dark. Not asleep, dark. I tapped the side. Nothing. I leaned forward, pressing the button again, waiting for that soft grayscale image of my son, breathing slow in his crib. Still nothing. Not a chill moved over my skin. I stood quickly, nearly dropping the mug, and rushed down the hallway toward the nursery. The door creaked open just as I'd left it. Inside, the white noise machine still buzzed softly. My son lay in his crib, perfectly still, chest rising and falling. Safe. Then I saw it. The monitor plug lay limp on the floor, the cable coiled like a dead snake. Unplugged from the wall, that outlet was behind a dresser. No way it came loose by itself. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I'd plugged it in that morning. The dresser hadn't moved. I hadn't touched it. No one had, unless my fingers clenched the monitor cord. The back of my neck prickled. I waited until morning. No sleep. Just pacing, checking the monitor, double-checking the locks. By the time the sun rose, I'd made up my mind. I went down to the leasing office. "There's something off with the outlet in my nursery," I said, trying to sound casual, like I wasn't accusing anyone. It was unplugged in the night. Rosa, the woman at the desk, gave me a tight smile. Maybe a loose connection? I thought that too. But it's never happened before. She typed something into her system, then shrugged. I can send maintenance to check it. Could be nothing. Could be. But it wasn't. That afternoon, as I returned from the grocery store, the door to apartment 3B opened just as I passed. Emma Hart stepped out, sleek ponytail, flawless skin. That air of practiced friendliness. She smiled. "Hey. Sorry if you noticed the power issue last night," she said lightly, like we were talking about the weather. "We borrowed an outlet. Just for a minute. You know how these old walls are, barely any sockets." I blinked. "Borrowed an outlet?" "For the espresso machine," she added with a little laugh. "Didn't think it would be a big deal. We just needed one outlet." I didn't answer. She waved it off and turned back into her apartment, the door clicking shut behind her. Stood there, groceries heavy in my arms, a stone forming in my chest. They'd been in my apartment. There was No other explanation. No shared outlets. No mistake. They unplugged the monitor. They walked into my home, while I slept, while my baby slept, and they touched something meant to keep him safe. I called security. Do you have proof? The guard asked, brows raised, voice measured. His name was Malik. He seemed nice, but I didn't miss the hint of disbelief. I know what I saw. She admitted it. He frowned. Admitted to unplugging something, not to trespassing. That's a big difference. They were in my apartment. How else would the monitor be unplugged? He hesitated. There's no sign of forced entry. And the Harts are well known here. Clean record. Emma volunteers with the tenant board. I could feel the floor shifting beneath me. I wasn't being taken seriously. And worse, Emma knew she wouldn't be. That night, I moved the crib into my bedroom, and still, I didn't sleep because around 2:11 a.m., I heard something again. Not silence this time. A faint, mechanical click, like a door softly opening. Or a monitor shutting off, and when I looked at the screen again, it was black again. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I couldn't. My eyes felt raw, my thoughts scattered. I sat at the kitchen table, watching the baby monitor like it might reveal something more than just my son's soft movements. It didn't. But I watched anyway. By mid-morning, there was a knock at the door. Not the kind of knock that makes you jump. This was polite. Practiced. I opened it slowly. Emma stood there, holding a small glass dish covered in foil. I made lemon bars, she said with a warm smile. I felt bad about the mix-up. Just wanted to clear the air. She looked so normal. She wore a cardigan over a floral dress, her hair pulled into a low bun. Her voice was soft, melodic. But I noticed something different now. Her eyes didn't match her smile. They watched me too closely. I didn't move to take the dish. Why did you really unplug the monitor? Her expression didn't change. I already told you. We needed an outlet. We didn't mean any harm. You entered my apartment. She laughed gently. No, Ava. We didn't. There's a maintenance panel behind that wall, old buildings, remember? Nolan thought it might still be connected to our unit. He opened it, plugged the espresso machine into an outlet we thought was unused. It must have disrupted yours. That's all. I didn't believe her. She held the lemon bars out again. Really? I'm sorry. No hard feelings? I took them. Not because I forgave her, but because I wanted her to leave. As she turned, paused, then looked back at me. Oh. By the way, babies wake up a lot, don't they? You must be exhausted. I said nothing. She nodded to herself, smiled again, and walked away. That night, I checked every lock twice. I wedged a chair under the nursery doorknob, even though my son now slept beside me. I covered the peephole. I unplugged every non-essential device. I didn't know what Emma was doing, but I knew it wasn't about outlets. The next day, I talked to Rosa again in the leasing office. I want the locks changed, I told her. She looked surprised. Is something wrong? I think someone has a copy of my key. Rosa hesitated. We don't usually do emergency rekeying unless there's a police report. I stared at her. What if I file one? She sighed. You can try. But I should warn you, it might not go the way you think. The Harts, well, they've never had any issues. I think Emma's even friends with the property manager's wife. There it was. The subtle machinery of community loyalty. I was the new girl with a baby and a suspicion. They were the friendly couple with charm and credibility. Later that afternoon, as I was returning from the laundry room, I saw Nolan for the first time. He stood in front of 3B, phone to his ear, nodding slowly. He didn't notice me at first. When he did, he smiled. "Hey there," he said, pocketing his phone. "Ava, right?" I nodded, unsure how to respond. "Emma told me you had some concerns." "Totally get it. First-time parent and all. We really didn't mean to cause a stir." I didn't reply. He stepped closer, voice lowering. "You know, Emma has trouble sleeping sometimes. She hears everything. Even things that probably weren't meant to be heard." There was no mistaking it. A threat disguised as sympathy. He smiled again and walked back into his apartment. I felt the weight of it long after he was gone. That night, I went online. I started searching for legal advice. Ways to document suspicious behavior. I posted on a tenants forum under a pseudonym. I asked if anyone else had experienced strange things in our building. At first, no one responded. But then I got a private message: "If you live near 3B, be careful. You're not the first." That was all it said. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I wasn't the first. The message sat on my screen like a stain. "You're not the first." I read it over and over, as if the words might shift or deepen on their own. My fingers hovered above the keyboard, unsure of what to ask first. I finally typed, "Who else lived here before me? What happened to them?" No response. The profile that had messaged me was gone the next morning. Deleted. No posts, no username. No trace. It was like someone had whispered in my ear and vanished into the fog. I didn't tell anyone. Not Rosa, not security. I'd already learned what happened when you spoke up. The more I pushed, the more I looked unstable. I couldn't afford that. Not now. Not with a baby to protect. So instead, I started my own search. I asked around quietly. Starting with an older woman named Carla who always sat on the bench by the elevators. She wore house slippers everywhere and had a constant mug of coffee in hand. "I've lived here since '96, she told me. Seen all kinds of people come and go." I nodded casually. "Do you remember who lived in 3A before me?" She narrowed her eyes, thinking. A woman. Young, like you. Quiet. I think her name was Tasha or Tanya. Had a dog. Kept to herself. Do you know why she moved out?" Carla shrugged. "Didn't say. Just vanished one day. Left a note with the front desk saying she was relocating for work." That didn't sound right. Did she ever mention the hearts? Carla's face changed. She shifted in her seat, her gaze drifting to the hallway. They were always polite. But there was something off. Too perfect. "You know the type." I did. She sipped her coffee and leaned closer. "Once, I heard her and Nolan fighting. Through the vents. Real nasty. He was accusing her of hiding something, said she knew what she did. The next week, she was gone. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My son's breathing was steady beside me. Safe for now. But the idea that someone had been forced out, that I'd unknowingly stepped into her place, made me feel sick. I dug deeper. Found old posts from building forums archived in search engines. Buried threads with vague complaints about noise, electrical issues, items going missing, always near Unit 3B. I printed everything. Made a folder. I knew if I went to management with screenshots and whispers, I'd be brushed off. But if I had patterns, dates, names, it might be harder to ignore. Then, one morning, I found something that didn't belong. A folded piece of paper slipped under my door, opened it slowly, heart thudding. It was handwritten, in neat, almost overly careful print. She tried to prove something. She failed. Don't be her. No signature. No clue where it came from. But I knew exactly who it was meant for. I took it straight to Malik, the security guard. He read it silently, his jaw tightening. "This looks like a threat," he said. "I think so too." He nodded. "Let me check the cameras." A flicker of hope surged through me, but when I returned later that evening, Malik looked confused. "There's no footage," he said. "Someone looped the feed." "We didn't catch anything." Looped. Someone had overwritten the system. Not just a prank. Not kids. Someone who knew how to manipulate security. "I don't understand," I whispered. Malik looked uncomfortable. "We've had one or two similar issues before. But management brushed it off. If this keeps happening, you may want to document everything. Just in case." Just in case of what? That night, I went to the nursery. Not to put my son down, he now slept with me every night, but to look. To see. I pushed the dresser aside and examined the outlet. Nothing unusual. No maintenance panel like Emma claimed. Just drywall. Smooth, painted over, undisturbed. I knocked gently. Hollow, then again. Louder, and that's when I heard it. A second knock. From the other side, I froze. Not an echo. Not a coincidence. A deliberate answer. I backed away, heart pounding in my throat, and stared at the wall that separated my son's room from theirs. They were watching. Listening, and now. They knew I knew. I stood frozen in the nursery, staring at the wall like it had betrayed me. That knock. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a sound from the pipes or the building settling. It was timed. Intentional. Human. I moved the dresser all the way out, hands shaking. I pressed my palm flat against the wall. Cold. I listened, barely. Breathing, nothing, but I knew someone was there. The next day, I hired a handyman, not from the building. Someone independent. I found him through a local moms group, someone with no connection to the Hearts, to the management, to anyone who might try to twist what I was about to do. His name was Luis. Middle-aged, no-nonsense, polite. I told him I thought there might be faulty wiring behind the nursery wall and I needed to know if it was safe. He nodded, no questions. When he arrived, I kept the door open. My son was asleep in the bedroom, and I didn't want to leave him alone. Not even for a second. Luis tapped along the wall, checking for studs, then paused near the outlet. "This part here," he said. "Doesn't feel right. Sounds hollow, but no structural framing. Almost like a false panel." He grabbed his tools. I watched as he carefully cut into the drywall. The top layer came away clean. Beneath it, something unexpected. Not wires. Not pipes. A narrow, makeshift cavity. Like a hidden passage. Luis reached in with a flashlight, his brow furrowed. "There's something inside." He pulled out a small, sealed envelope, yellowed and dusty. He handed it to me, expression unreadable. I opened it. Inside was a photograph. A woman, maybe in her 20s, smiling in a sunlit room. I recognized the nursery wallpaper behind her. It was the same room. On the back of the photo, scrawled in quick, desperate handwriting, "If anything happens to me, it was them. 3B, they know everything." My mouth went dry. My chest locked tight. Luis looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded slowly, folding the photo, heart pounding. "Yeah. Thank you." He patched the wall, took his payment, and left. As soon as the door closed behind him, I sat down and stared at the photo. This woman, this former tenant, she'd known. She'd tried to warn someone. And she'd hidden the evidence where only another terrified mother might think to look. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside my son, eyes on the monitor, phone clutched in one hand. I took photos of the envelope, the handwriting, the cavity in the wall before it was sealed, and still, I didn't feel safe. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't even know what I needed. Restraining orders? Tenant protections? Eviction complaints? The assistant promised someone would call me back within 48 hours. 48 hours felt like a lifetime. That afternoon, Rosa buzzed my apartment. "Just a heads up," she said. "Emma Hart filed a noise complaint against you." said she heard. Yelling. Repeated banging on the walls. I nearly laughed. She's lying. I'm just the messenger, Rosa said. But, maybe try to keep it down. I hung up without replying. This was how it started. Turn the system against me. Build a paper trail that made me look erratic, unstable. And the worst part? It was working. Later that day, I took a walk with the stroller, trying to clear my head. On my way back, I passed a young man in the lobby, maybe early 30s, holding a stack of folders. He hesitated, then turned toward me. Excuse me. He said. Do you live in 3A? I tensed. Who's asking? I'm with a private firm. We're looking into a civil case involving a previous resident. I blinked. Which resident? He checked his folder. Tasha Feldman. Disappeared about 7 months ago. My blood ran cold. He looked at me closely. You've only just moved in, haven't you? I nodded slowly. He lowered his voice. If you see or hear anything strange, you should call this number. He handed me a card. You might be in the middle of something bigger than you realize. I took the card. As I stepped into the elevator, it hit me. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. Something had happened to Tasha. Something that started with silence, escalated with manipulation, and ended in disappearance, and I had the photo to prove it, but the question burned in my mind: how long before I became the next one to vanish? I didn't tell anyone about the man in the lobby. Not yet. I didn't call the number. Instead, I locked it in the back of my mind, like a card I'd play later, when I needed to disappear or when someone finally listened. Spent the next day installing my own camera. I bought a tiny one online, discreet enough to hide behind. A plant on the bookshelf, angled just right to catch the nursery hallway. It had motion detection. Cloud backup. Audio. No one was going to unplug anything in my home again without me knowing exactly when and how. That night, I left the nursery. Door open and the light off. The monitor was fully charged, plugged into a brand new surge protector I bought myself. No excuses. No shared circuits. No faulty panels. I waited. At 2:23 a.m., the motion alert went off. I jumped out of bed, heart racing, and grabbed my phone. Playback. A flicker, then movement. The nursery hallway light flickered for half a second. Then, a shadow, brief, barely there, but definitely real, moved past the edge of the camera's frame. Too fast to identify, but unmistakably human. No sound. No door opening. Nothing on the hallway cam outside my apartment. Whoever it was didn't come through the front. I saved the footage. Backed it up. Uploaded it to 2 drives. Then I called Malik. He came up 20 minutes later, rubbing sleep from his eyes, wearing his uniform jacket over a hoodie. This better be good, he muttered. But when I showed him the footage, his expression changed. That's inside your unit? Yes. He stared at the screen. How'd they get in? I don't know. I checked the windows. Everything's locked. Unless there's a hidden access point, like from behind the walls. He was quiet for a moment. I'll report it to building management, he said finally. And copy security headquarters. But Ava, if there's no sign of forced entry, they're going to say you imagined it. I have the footage. They'll say it's doctored. He looked exhausted. Not skeptical. Just worn down. That morning, when I opened my front door to grab the mail, I found a small package on the floor. No postage. No label. Inside, the lemon bar dish Emma had given me, washed clean. Inside it, a USB stick. My hands trembled as I plugged it into an old laptop, one I hadn't used in years. There were 2 video files. The first was dated 2 weeks earlier, before I ever confronted them. The footage was from inside my apartment. My bedroom. The angle was from the ceiling corner, Where the smoke detector Saturday I hadn't replaced the detector, IT hadn't gone off in weeks. The footage showed me asleep, the baby beside me. Nothing else. Just stillness. But the fact it existed at all made me feel physically ill. The second video was from 2 nights ago. This one was darker. Shakier. It was someone's phone, filming me as I walked from the laundry room back to my apartment. They were close. Right behind me. Breathing, I slammed the laptop shut and dropped it to the floor. This was no longer surveillance. It was psychological war. The hearts weren't just manipulating me. They were watching me inside my own home. They wanted me scared. Frozen. IT almost worked, but I knew something now. They needed me to stay. Whatever their endgame was, it wasn't to chase me away. It was to isolate me. To silence me. Like they'd done to Tasha.so, I went to the property manager. I didn't ask permission. I demanded it. I want a full inspection, I said. Of the walls, the vents, the ceiling. Everything. I have reason to believe there are unauthorized modifications connecting 3A and 3B. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. That's not protocol. I have video evidence, I said flatly. If you don't check, I'll go to the city. I'll file a safety violation. I'll call the press. His jaw clenched. We'll send someone. But that night, the real message came through. At 3:01 a.m., I woke up to my baby screaming. The monitor was fine. The lights were on, but on the nursery wall, just above the crib, someone had written in black marker, "You should have eaten the lemon bars." The camera caught nothing. The hallway was empty, but the message was clear. They were in, and now it wasn't just a game anymore. I didn't clean the message off the wall, not immediately. I needed it there, untouched. For the inspector. For Malik. For anyone who might finally believe me, but by 10 a.m., no one had arrived. No building official. No property manager. Not even Malik, who usually checked in when things escalated. The silence was louder than any knock. I checked my emails. Nothing. I called the building office, straight to voicemail. I stood in the nursery doorway staring at the words again. Black and cruel against pale blue paint, "You should have eaten the lemon bars." And for the first time, I felt something sharper than fear, rage. They were mocking me. Erasing lines they had carefully tiptoed along until now. And no one was going to stop them. So I did something I'd been avoiding. I called the number the man in the lobby had given me. A woman answered. Crisp, professional. Langston Investigations. I introduced myself, explained who had given me the card, and described everything. The videos. The note. The writing on the wall. She didn't interrupt once. At the end, she said, "My name is Mara Langston. I'm the firm's founder. I believe you." The words hit me like a flood. "Have you heard of Tasha Feldman?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "She's presumed missing." Her case was quiet, no signs of foul play, no family willing to push hard. "But we believe something happened in your building. And we believe the hearts know more than they let on." "Then why hasn't anyone done anything?" "Because they don't leave evidence. They leave doubt." Mara agreed to meet in person that afternoon. A neutral location, she insisted on a public cafe. She would bring someone who had lived in the building before. Someone who had their own story to tell. I packed a bag. Essentials only. Flash drive. Hard copies of everything. I took my son and left. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. The cafe was half empty when we arrived. Mara stood up as I walked in, tall, sharp-featured, eyes like steel behind glasses. Beside her sat a woman in her late 20s. Pale. Thin. Nervous fingers tapping the side of her coffee cup. "Ava," Mara said, "this is Claire. She lived in 3C until last year. Claire didn't smile. I used to hear everything through the walls. The fights. The screaming. The recordings. What recordings? I asked. They would play audio through the vents. Children crying. Women sobbing. At first, I thought it was real. Then I realized it was on a loop. The same sounds. Replayed over and over. Designed to get inside your head. I felt dizzy. They call it conditioning, Mara said. They erode trust. In your memory. In your environment. Even in your child. Tasha experienced the same thing. And when she finally tried to fight back, she disappeared. Do you think they killed her? I asked. Claire flinched. Mara didn't answer right away. I think they silenced her, she said carefully. And now they're trying to do the same to you. I told them about the wall. The note. The videos. Claire's face paled further with each detail. They have to be stopped, I said. Mara nodded. We've started building a case. But it's not enough. We need something irrefutable. Something that connects their behavior to an actual crime. I hesitated, then pulled the photo from my bag. The one I found behind the nursery wall. Mara studied it in silence. This might be it. She asked if she could take it for forensic scanning. I agreed. As we parted ways, she said, whatever you do, don't go back tonight. Not without backup. But I couldn't leave everything behind. Not yet. I had to know what they were doing while I was gone. I had to see it with my own eyes. So after dark, I returned to the building. I left the baby with my sister, first time I'd asked her for help. I told her only part of the truth. When I entered the apartment, it felt wrong, too clean. The air was cold. Like the windows had been opened, aired out. But nothing was out of place, except one thing. On the floor of the nursery, where the crib had been, was a Polaroid photo. I picked it up with trembling hands. It was me, sleeping last night's pajamas. My son beside me. The angle was from above. Someone had stood in my room, watched me sleep, and waited for the moment I was most vulnerable to take a picture. On the back of the photo, in the same black marker, "We're so glad you're staying." The photo was a declaration. Not just that they had been inside my bedroom, but that they no longer cared if I knew. They wanted me to see. To feel it. They wanted fear to become routine, like brushing my teeth or checking the locks. They were normalizing it, but something had shifted in me. It wasn't fear anymore, it was fury. And something else, too. A cold clarity. They were playing a game, and they thought they were winning. So I started playing back. The next morning, I returned to the nursery and measured the wall again. Floor to ceiling. I compared it to the hallway dimensions. Something wasn't lining up. With Mara's help, I submitted a formal request for a structural inspection to the city, bypassing building management entirely. I also reached out to an architecture professor at the local university, someone Mara knew through her network. He agreed to meet me and walk the floor plan. We met the next evening, just as the sun dipped below the skyline. He brought blueprints, official ones pulled from city archives. "There's something off," he said immediately. "This section between 3A and 3B isn't accounted for. According to the original plans, there should be a solid support beam here. But the interior measurements you gave me suggest a void. About 2 feet wide. A hidden space?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "More like a service corridor. But it's not on any modern blueprint. We traced it on paper. It ran directly behind the nursery wall. If someone knew it existed, they could move between apartments undetected." Mara's theory sharpened. The Harts weren't just spying. They had built an entire secret channel to control and intimidate their neighbors. That night, Mara and I returned to the apartment with a crowbar and gloves, waited until 2 a.m., just past the time they usually made their moves. Then, in complete silence, we pulled away a section of the nursery wall, guided by the cavity I had discovered weeks earlier. Behind it wasn't just wiring or pipes. It was a passage. A narrow, dust-choked corridor between the units, barely wide enough to crawl through. Lined with insulation and darkness, I couldn't breathe. Mara shined her flashlight inside. "There are footprints," she whispered. "Someone's been using this." We followed it. Slowly. Quietly. At the end of the corridor, another panel, this one hinged, not nailed. We opened it carefully. It led into the back closet of 3B. Emma and Nolan's apartment, but it wasn't a normal closet. It was a surveillance hub. Small monitors lined the shelves, each wired to tiny hidden cameras. Some were off. Others flickered with live feeds from around the building. One monitor showed the hallway outside my door. Another showed the laundry room. A third, my bedroom. They'd been watching everyone. There were labeled folders stacked beside the screens. Tasha. Claire. Unit 2D. Each one likely filled with photos, logs, reports. A pattern of control, and at the bottom of the stack, Ava. Mara opened it slowly. Inside were printed screenshots of my text messages. Still images. From my laptop camera. Audio transcripts. Notes in tight handwriting: "She's not compliant. She is paranoid, use it. She may respond to maternal guilt." I felt nauseous, but then I found something worse. A birth certificate, not mine. Not my son's. Emma Hart, date of birth, 1992. Mother, Deborah Hart. Father, Nolan Hart. I stared at it, uncomprehending. "That's not possible," I said. Mara looked closer. "No. It's not. Unless." She flipped the certificate over. Attached was a psychiatric release document. Signed by Deborah Hart, 4 years ago, patient, Emma Hart. Diagnosis: delusional attachment disorder. Obsessive surveillance tendencies. History of maternal fixation. Released into full-time care under legal guardian Nolan Hart. Her father wasn't her husband, was her father, and together, they weren't just controlling tenants, they were choosing them. Isolating them. Recreating Emma's delusions of family life. Targeting women with children. Turning the building into a stage for a fantasy Emma couldn't let go of, and Nolan, for reasons still hidden, was helping her maintain. I felt the blood leave my face. Suddenly, a sound behind us. A click, then a voice. "I knew you'd find it." Emma stood in the doorway of the closet, blocking our only exit. She smiled, eyes wide, bright with something not quite human. "You're just like her," she said. Tasha. So angry. So disappointing. Then Nolan's voice, calm behind her. "It's time, Emma." And the door closed. The door locked behind them with a soft mechanical snap. We're sealed in. Mara and I, inside the Hart's surveillance closet, surrounded by screens that glowed like witnesses to every moment they'd stolen. Emma stood between us in the passage, one hand behind her back. Nolan loomed in the hallway, calm, collected, like a man carrying out a routine. "You shouldn't have come in here," Emma said, softly. "This wasn't yours." Her voice was childlike now. Not the clipped, curated tone she'd used for weeks. This was raw, unfiltered, emotional. Like a daughter scolded in her own dollhouse. "This was supposed to be quiet," Nolan added. "She was supposed to follow the pattern." "What pattern?" I asked, stepping forward. "Drive women out of their homes? Watch their children? Pretend you had a family?" Emma's lips quivered. "We don't drive them out. We fix them. We keep them safe." "You made Tasha disappear," Mara said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tremor beneath it. Emma looked at Nolan. "That wasn't us. That was her fault. She stopped playing." I reached slowly into my pocket and tapped the silent alarm button Mara had given me at the cafe. A direct link to a private security firm she used on high-risk cases. No signal confirmation. Just trust. It worked, you can't keep me here, I said. Emma tilted her head. You're not a prisoner. You're part of it now. She moved toward the wall and pressed something I couldn't see. A panel slid open. Not toward my apartment, toward a different corridor, one we hadn't noticed. She built it, Nolan said. Her safe place. Inside was a tiny room. A bed, a monitor, a child's blanket, familiar. It was a replica of my son's nursery, exact. Down to the wallpaper pattern. I nearly collapsed. You were going to replace me, I said. Weren't you? Emma didn't answer. She stepped aside, inviting me in. She could live here, Nolan said. You could rest. We could take care of everything. They weren't asking. Mara took a step forward, blocking my path. You built this entire system to trap women. To feed her illness. You're not caretakers. You're predators. Emma flinched like she'd been slapped. I'm not sick, she whispered. Then why the cameras? I asked. Why the lemon bars? Why the lies? Emma's smile broke. Just slightly. But it was Nolan who stepped forward this time, pulling something from behind his back. A syringe. Enough questions, he said. Mara lunged before he could reach us. She knocked the syringe from his hand, and we ran, straight into the service corridor, through the wall, crawling, scraping, breathless. Emma screamed behind us, her voice rising, unhinged. Come back. You're ruining it. We burst through my apartment wall, covered in dust. I grabbed the baby carrier from beside the couch and ran. Down the hallway, past startled neighbors, into the stairwell. At the ground floor, private security met us, 3 men in uniform with Mara's badge in hand. They didn't ask questions, they went up. The police arrived shortly after. A search warrant followed. Cameras were removed. Files were seized. Emma was found in the replica nursery, humming to herself. Nolan had vanished, but his fingerprints were on everything. They found a second room in the basement. Soundproofed. Locked. Inside were personal items from the missing tenants, Tasha's scarf, Claire's phone, a child stuffed animal that had never been mine. It was over, so they said, but even now, weeks later, I still check the monitor 5 times before I sleep. I replaced every smoke detector, every outlet. I moved. I repainted. I installed floodlights. I left nothing to chance, because when someone breaks your world that carefully, you stop trusting the air itself. Mara called last week. They're building a formal case, she said. Emma will likely be committed. Nolan's still at large. Do you think he'll come back? I asked. There was a pause. I think he already tried. You just didn't answer the door. I don't know what that meant. I don't want to know, but every now and then, when I walk past the nursery, I swear I hear something, just behind the wall. A breath, a scrape, a whisper. Maybe it's just the echo of being watched.